Okay, if I could have your attention, I'd like to call the November meeting of the Northeast Ohio Sustainable Communities Consortium to order. I'm Jason Segedy, board chair, and on behalf of all the people of Summit County and the city of Akron, I'd like to welcome you to our continued 12 counties in 12 months in Akron and Summit County today. Those of you that were able to join us for lunch heard from Dave Lieberth, and really is a fascinating guy, and his background on the city I think is second to none. I think if you do have any questions, related to collaborations or some of the things that Dave was talking about, please feel free to talk to any of us, Connie Kraus or myself or some of the others that are here from Summit County and Akron, and we can point you in the right direction. Having said that, if there are any additional local officials from Summit County or Akron that we missed earlier, I'd invite you to introduce yourself. I don't think I see anyone right now, but looks like there are none. If not, continuing on, if we could go around the table, just introduce ourselves as has been our past practice. I'll start with Hunter here to my left.
Hunter Morrison, Executive Director.
Tom Tyrrell, Vice Chair of RPI and Secretary of NEOSCC.
Grace Gallucci, Treasurer of NEOSCC and Executive Director of NOACA.
Steve Hambley, Medina County Commissioner, Second Vice Chair of NEOSCC.
Nancy Cook, City of Akron, a manager of the city.
Pam Hoggins, Deputy Director, Akron Metropolitan Housing Authority.
Fred Wright, President and CEO of the Akron Urban League and owner of this building that you know. I'm the co-chair of the Community and Engagement Committee.
Janice Schweitzer, Ashtabula County.
Fred Collier, Deputy Director, Cleveland City Planning Commission.
Bill Davignon, Director of Community Development, City of Youngstown.
Jeff Dutton with the Stark County Area Transportation Study.
Corey Minor-Smith, Stark Metropolitan Housing Authority.
Bob Now, Stark County Regional Planning.
Mike Lyons, representative from the RPI and co-chair of the Communications and Engagement.
Greg Brown, Policy Bridge.
Connie Kraus, Director of Community and Economic Development and co-chair of the Economic Development Workstream.
I'm Gene Nixon, Health Commissioner of Summit County Public Health.
David Beach from the Cleveland Museum of Natural History.
John Getchie, Executive Director of the State Regional Council.
Kevin Hadley, Executive Director of Nashville.
Joe Calvish, Cleveland RTA.
Mike Challenger, Lorraine County Growth Partnership.
Anna DSNS, representing the Mahoney County Commissioners.
George Garchar, Catholic Charities Diocese of Youngstown.
Bill Miller, Executive Director of the Trumbull County Planning Commission.
Kelly Harris, Administrative Assistant.
And again, I'm Jason Segedy, Director of Greater Akron's Metropolitan Planning Organization, AMATS. And Fred, thank you for making your house available to us, and a very nice house it is. With that, the next item on the agenda is public comment. I don't believe we did have any public comments. I'm getting the clear signal, so we'll move on to item number 3, which is the report on the Board of Directors and Executive Committee. First item is approval of the meeting minutes from our October 23rd meeting. Could have a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion from Mr. Hambley. Sure.
Natural History Museum was represented at that meeting by Brad Chase.
Okay.
It wasn't indicated in the attendance.
Okay, well,
I'll move with that amendment.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Steve. Do we have a second? Second, Mr. Garchar. Any further discussion, questions, or corrections? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Next item was a report on the Executive Committee. The Executive Committee did meet twice between the last board meeting and this. The first was our regular meeting on November 13th. And the second meeting was last week. We did have a special meeting on November 20th to discuss the request for proposals and a recommendation for a consultant to do the scenario planning and some of the other regional planning work for the consortium, which we'll have a detailed item on the agenda later covering that. I didn't have anything else really to report on those meetings. Just before we move on, invite anyone else on the executive committee if you did have anything to report from those meetings. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item C, which is the board and executive committee meeting schedule. I just wanted to bring to your attention the next regularly scheduled board meeting will be we'll be back in Hudson for the winter. If you were at the last couple of meetings, we talked about taking a hiatus from the 12 counties in 12 months during the winter months. I believe we'll start that back up in April, but the next meeting will be at 1 o'clock, December 18th, at the Hudson Library, where we were meeting last year and early this spring. Also, wanted to note that the next meeting of the executive committee will be that same morning, same place at 11 o'clock to transact the business that we have before us before going into the board meeting. And also wanted to just note that in your packet there is a schedule of the board and executive committee meeting dates for 2013 to get those on your calendar. With that, I'll turn things over to Jeff Anderle, who's going to talk a little bit about the upcoming board member learning and sharing sessions.
Thanks, Jason. One quick note on the 2013 schedule. We will be at the Hudson Library for December, February, and March. They were booked in January, so we'll come up with an alternative space somewhere centrally located for that meeting itself. So, but I did want to just remind everyone of the invitations that you received over the last couple weeks regarding the board learning and sharing sessions. And really, in its essence, this is the culmination of the work that the board has done with Carreri over the last year. And the session is really going to be twofold, the first half of which will be facilitated by Carreri, talking about some of the foundation work and making certain that there's an understanding and a comprehension of that, and making certain that the board members feel like they understand how we arrived at those principles and vision and mission, as well as what their role and accountability is going forward with the organization. The second half of the session will be focused and facilitated by our strategy, and that will talk a little bit about messaging around what we're going to be launching in the next year, as well as some training around media training and some of the other different situations that we have found ourselves in over the past year relative to communications and how to be prepared for some of those situations. All told, it's probably a 4.5-hour session, although I do think that will probably be done in 4 hours. So the first one is tomorrow morning at 8:30 on the 5th floor of 146 South High Street in the NEOSCC building. And then the second session will be on December 7th, same time, 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that will be also at the 5th floor in the 146 South High Street. So far, I think we have 5 or 6 people signed up for tomorrow, and I think 11 signed up for the December date. If people can still make it tomorrow, we have opportunities for people to still sign up for that. And if neither of those 2 dates won't work for you, we can also add a second or a third date, and it might be something that gets wrapped in with the board meeting, either before or after the board meeting in Hudson in December. And really, I think it's critical at this portion in time to kind of wrap up that work that we did with Carreri and make certain that everyone kind of understands some of the things that were decided, and as well to kind of equip all of you with the messages and kind of how we're going to move forward in 2013, because as we're going to discuss later in the meeting today, there's going to be a lot of activity, particularly beginning once we get the scenario planning consultant on board. And it's something that we want all of you to be ready for, as well as some of your staff. So there will be some things to take home to your staffs as well. Any questions?
Those are either or?
Yeah, it's an either or, I'm sorry. Yeah, we offer 2 sessions to try to make the schedule work out better.
Any other questions for John?
I'll be around after the meeting, so let me know if you can and you want to sign up for one of the other sessions. Let either Kelly Harris or myself know. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. right, final item under this portion of the agenda was a report from the nominating committee. And at the executive committee meeting, I think it might have been in October, we had put together a nominating committee for officers for 2013, and Connie Kraus was heading that up. And Connie, I don't know if you had anything to report at this time on that.
We have a meeting set December the 11th, so we will have a report after that.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and I think, like Connie said, the intention is then to come to the board meeting on the 18th with a slate of officers for 2013 for your consideration. Thanks, Connie. Okay, with that, we'll move into the organization portion of the meeting. We have a couple of reports from the staff pertaining to the budget and other financial matters. And the first one is on leveraged match and the survey that went out. And I will turn that over to Sarah Mayer.
Good afternoon, everyone. In your packets, you have the latest leverage match report, which is a little bit earlier due to the holiday, so there's probably a couple in there that haven't been reported yet. But we have match reported at $1.2 million, and you'll see that that is just under 40% of what's been committed, and we're more than halfway through the project at this point. So if you have not turned in your leverage match form, please do so. And then also a survey was sent around about a month ago for leverage match commitments and matching staffs to different projects that will be upcoming in the next year that you could commit people to from your organization. We didn't have a very good response to that survey yet. It is still open, so I very much encourage you to all fill it out yourselves and also send it around to anyone on your staffs that you think would be good to work on any of the projects. And the last page of your board packet, the Vibrant Neo December 2012 list, the fourth item down there is the leverage match survey. Gives you information on where to email your leverage match forms to, and if it'd be helpful, I could resend the link to the leverage match survey to all of you after this meeting. So please send that around to your organization so we get a better return for the survey.
And if I could add a test, Sarah, I think that's a great idea if you would send the link again. And there's a little bit of a testimonial. I know some of you took the board survey a couple months ago on how we were doing, and that was kind of a long survey. This one isn't. This is pretty easy. Yeah, 5 minutes. It's pretty quick and easy and painless to fill out. And it really would be a big help to the staff, I think, as they're going forward, trying to kind of staff the various items in the work program that we'll be fulfilling next year. And I think we talked to the executive committee a little bit. This will be a little bit of an iterative process, I think, where the staff gets input via this survey on what you or your staff at your own organization might be best suited to help with. And then as we flesh out the details, we'll probably have a back and forth conversation about who does what. But this is kind of the first step in a really important process. So if you could fill it out, that would be a big help. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, next on the agenda, Emma Barcelona to discuss the October month-end financial report.
Thank you. In your packets, you have all the information available. I just wanted to point out that through the end of October, we have spent just over $1.5 million of our funds through the program. You can see we're under budget still in all of our areas of expenditures. On our cash position, you'll see the funds that we have drawn from HUD as well as receipted from other sources. I do want to note that we do have a pretty large draw, about $100,000 that we've requested from the funds that were already made available via Team Neo from the Fund for Our Economic Future that didn't post in October, but hopefully that will post this month, and if not, you should see it in the December report. Are there any questions I can answer on our budget, expenditures, or cash position? All right, the second attachment, as you have there, typically is all of our major contracts, both in consultants and other contracting areas, and our position with regard to the funds set aside for those that have been approved, as well as our expenditures there, and a status update. I'll leave the major part of this, of course, to Hunter. later on. But of course, the biggest thing here pending is entering into negotiations for the response to the RFP for planning management and scenario planning and fiscal impact analysis. Are there any questions on this report? Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. With that, launching into, I think, what's kind of the main item on the agenda today, which is the regional planning slash scenario planning slash fiscal impact consultant. Hunter's going to give, I think you'll find a quite detailed and informative report out on that issue and the resolution that's for our consideration. So with that, take it away, Hunter. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your packet a memo from Emma and Sarah regarding the summing up the work that we've been about the business of doing for the last month or 6 weeks, which is to seek proposals for scenario planning and fiscal impact analysis, as well as for project management. And today I want to report out the results of this work of the committee and then of the decision of the executive committee and the recommendation to you. The process is looking at 3 components of regional planning, scenario planning, and fiscal impact services. The purpose of the RFP that went out was to develop a vision and framework plan for the region's future. Work with us and the staff on what we now know as a Vibrant NEO 2040. The 3 tasks again are listed, and let me just remind you of the organization chart that we talked about several weeks ago, or 2 months ago, and that points up in the yellow the areas that are out for bid. The planning management, fiscal impact, and scenario planning were those elements identified as needing additional outside consultancy. Other consultants have been engaged already in the regional assessment of impediments to fair housing, engagement itself, and communications. In the green is the NOACA-loaned executive, Sarah Meyer, who is taking responsibility for managing the product side of our work program. So we're dealing today with those elements of the plan framed around scenario planning, but also with project management and fiscal impact. Again, what we're dealing with in our work are the 3 elements of vision, framework, and action products. Where we are now is we've been going through the process of identifying what we have. The next 2 stages, what do we want and how do we get there, are really the core of the scenario planning process to create that framework and to instruct and provide grist for the action products. And not to belabor what we've talked about in the past, but again, the context of this is to create a vision of agreed upon values and principles and goals for Northeast Ohio, create a framework of policies and practices and relationships that can achieve the goals of that vision and address the need for action products in the form of a dashboard, toolkit, pilots, and policies. And again, what we are dealing with today are the consultancy work that needs to fill in where we need to be bringing additional staff capacity on board. So let me go directly to the 3 elements in question. The first is the regional planning services and project management. The task at hand there is to directly manage a consultant team that together with our staff and in-kind will create the Vibrant NEO vision. To increase our operational capacity by providing project management services, and to coordinate the scenario planning, fiscal impact, and fiscal impact analysis with the work of our engagement and AI research consultants. The second element is the scenario planning, to actually engage the stakeholders in a regional vision, to develop and analyze and evaluate alternatives to business as usual, and to recommend broad strategies to make Northeast Ohio more competitive, equitable, and sustainable, and to work in concert with fiscal impact analysis so that we are looking at the price of different options as we are looking at those options. And finally, fiscal impact analysis, which is assessing short and long-term fiscal impacts of both our business as usual case, what happens if we continue our current patterns for the next several decades, and what happens if there are alternatives, and identifying alternative infrastructure investment strategies as part of this regional visioning. The process of evaluating the requests for proposal involved a wide number of people from the organization. What we did basically is ask the group assembled here to focus in on one segment of the three, and then come together to evaluate all of them together. So we had the opportunity to look at each element, the scenario planning, project management, scenario planning, and fiscal impact separately, and then reason together to see what the best combination of firms and talents were. The schedule started really with in August and September with the writing and review of the RFP, and you know that not only is reviewed locally but also by HUD. The RFP itself, with 3 sections, was issued on September 20th. We had a review committee meeting on October 18th, which we reviewed the scoring process. In October 22nd, the RFP was closed. We had 7 proposals overall received. And from October 23rd to November 5th, we had a process of individual and group scoring. The evaluation criteria boiled down to the following: looking at the firm background, experience, and qualifications, the team experience and qualifications, the project plan, both the proposed management plan and approach, and the integration with our existing consultants and staff, and in-kind, and then the cost and fees, including the hourly and overhead levels and the level of effort. There are 7 firms that submitted. 3 submitted for all 3 components. The others, 4 submitted for subsets. In the green are the firms that were interviewed for the specific components that we determined as a group were their strong points. The next process started in November with a meeting of the team to shortlist, consultant interviews on the 12th and 13th of November, with final questions sent to the firms thereafter, and a meeting at the NEOSCC to review the different proposals. The analysis of the work came forward with a recommendation to the Executive Committee and the Board of Directors of Sasaki Associates and their team of partners and sub-consultants. And that was then presented to a special Executive Committee meeting on November 20th. So the recommended team, which has bid on all 3 components, is Sasaki Associates, partnered with City Architecture, Fregonesi Associates of Portland, Nelson Nygaard of New York, Market Street Services, as well as a number of potential day consultants or experts as needed. Boiling down the assessment of the team's strengths as we determined them, to answer the question, why the Sasaki team? Well, the first element of that was the team experience working with scenario planning projects, including or sustainable community projects, including scenario planning. The Sasaki team is involved in a comparable piece of work in Des Moines. Fregonesi is one of the country's leading firms in scenario planning as well. The team experience also in dealing with large-scale projects in this region with tight timelines, specifically Gateway and the Euclid Corridor, where a number of the members of the selection committee had personal experience with the capacity of the firm and the team to deal with projects that are complex and on our tight timelines. We also looked at the fact that there's a strong local partner with extensive Northeast Ohio experience in city architecture. Frankly, the other teams bringing forward their experience could not match that. There was committed and seasoned project leadership from the principals at the top of all of the firms. This was a project plan that they presented a project plan that addressed all the tasks, which we believe would simplify project management and facilitate coordination. And in balance, it was the best overall combination of skills, experience, and project approach. As you know, the core of this work is scenario planning, and one of the things that the team looked at in depth was the approach to scenario planning, and the review committee determined that this really was the most important element of the three tasks. That what was necessary for us is to hire the most experienced team because there isn't time for a learning curve. And that Suzuki with Fregonesi and City Architecture was the most qualified of the groups proposing to do this work on time. The other elements of the discussion, which were important for you to be aware of, were the discussion around the nature of the actual scenario planning methodology. We have asked for training of our staff and board and other members, and that the Envision Tomorrow software that's been proposed to be used is non-proprietary, as is and embeds within it the fiscal impact analysis, which also by definition is non-proprietary. Other proponents have proprietary systems, which create some interesting downstream issues. And the other question that was asked is, can your model handle negative growth conditions, which are those which are found in Northeast Ohio? And the answer is yes, that they can. So these are considerations of detail that we thought you should be aware of as we looked at the approaches. Some of the issues that we identified: the proposed project budget is higher than available funds, but included many more hours than the comparable proposals. And in preliminary discussions with the Suzuki team, they have been responsive to finding tasks within the proposal that could be accomplished using local resources in place of consultant time, and that these issues we will be addressing in contract negotiations. These local resources include a proportion of the program management office staff, our in-kind membership, volunteers, and the local consultants that have already been engaged and need to be woven in seamlessly into this process. We talked earlier about the importance of the consortium participation, the survey. We believe that provides resources deliverable to this overall project that will save us time and money. So our next steps, we are asking today for the board approval to enter into contract negotiations with the Suzuki team. Between now and December 18th, we'll be refining that scope and with them, in consultation with the Technical Steering Committee and the Finance Committee, and then come back to the Executive Committee and the Board at the December 18th meeting with a recommendation for a final not to exceed amount and a contract for your approval at that meeting. So today's action we're requesting essentially is permission to enter into the We have members of the team here, and I just want to take 1 minute to thank everybody who participated in this and read these proposals from the 7 teams, participated in the discussions, and I think we had, as you saw from the list, a well-rounded representation across the region and with different disciplines being brought forward. With that, Mr. Chairman, any questions?
Any questions for Hunter, either on what he presented or the information in the memo or in the resolution itself?
Joe. Yeah, Hunter, a pretty good degree of confidence you can negotiate an appropriate resolution to the budget issue?
Yes, we believe so.
I just, I've worked with most of these firms, have very high regard with all of them, and certainly would like to offer a recommendation.
Thank you.
What was the budget amount?
The budget that we have told them is not to exceed $1 million. Now we'll have negotiations. Their proposal was substantially above that, but they've indicated they can come down to what we have to work with. time and budget. We will be negotiating on that basis. Yes.
You had mentioned the fiscal aspect of the scenario planning. How does that interact or interface with the fiscal consultant that we're going to hire?
Well, the fiscal impact analysis, we are basically hiring through this work.
Both of those work items.
Yeah, what we're proposing is that the Sasaki team will handle all three elements, and that the fiscal impact analysis is baked into, as opposed to attached to, the scenario planning model.
So we won't need to obviously hire a fiscal.
That's correct.
Consultant. So it's all going to be under this.
So we're looking for a package deal. George?
First of all, just to commend, it sounds like a very comprehensive process that was used, and appreciate the explanation. My question is sort of a follow-up to Joe's question. Sometimes someone will be willing to, adjust their fee structure, but then it affects performance. Any concern about that?
No. I will tell you, on a personal level, I've worked with principals from several of these firms for several decades, and I expect them to be people of their word, and that we will produce what we need. Yes, Jason.
Hunter, I think you're going to cover some of this next on the agenda with talking about Vibrant Neo 2040 in general, but so if any of my question goes into that, just ignore it and talk about it later. But could you give the board a sense, maybe insofar as we know about the scope of what we would be asking the consultant to do, especially as it intersects with the 5 work streams and for example, I think on one of the slides you had infrastructure scenarios, one of the scenarios. Could you talk a little bit about, insofar as we know at this point, what kind of scenarios might be modeled as far as, infrastructure, economic development, the environment, and so forth, the different issues we're looking at?
I think part of that is that's a question to ask of them. They are very aware of the work streams and products that have come out of the work streams in terms of the condition and trends report. Basically, the scenario planning process identifies a base case of extrapolation of existing trends and their impacts going forward several decades, and then working through a community engagement process at the alternatives that come forward from the communities that are engaged as to what are the other options. We have a unique circumstance here, I think, in that we've got the work streams which have been drilling down on their groups. We have caucuses of organizations, and one of the arts will be to weave these together, and that's one of the discussions that we're going to be having about how best to use that talent. How best to use that talent that we brought together, particularly on the work streams, as the subject matter experts in these areas. And I think we've identified through the work streams the key topics that a scenario must address in terms of the economy, the environment, the communities. Weaving in the work that's coming out of the AI, weaving in, and one of the key issues that the fund brought up with us some time ago was weaving in the regional economic competitiveness strategy, our regional economic development strategy. How does that play out into scenarios? So I think these are questions that we are going to be probing, but basically the process will be to work with our teams, both our staff and our work streams and the caucuses such as transportation and health and parks to craft a robust set of options going forward. The other element about how those relate to the products, clearly the dashboard is one of the elements of a dashboard is an element of a scenario planning process. That will be part of the work of the dashboard team to make sure that gets integrated well. Policies come out of scenario planning. Toolkits and prototypes, we think, also will flow out of this work in terms of the things that will help us to implement the visions that people have.
any further questions for Hunter? Any more discussion before we move into the resolution portion? Well, if not, maybe just to reiterate real quickly, the resolution that we're being asked to consider would be for authorization for the project, for the Program Management Office to enter into negotiations with the recommended firm and its team for the scenario planning and other adjunct pieces that were just presented. So with that, I'll entertain a motion on the resolution.
Second.
I think I saw Joe first and then Grace on the second. Any further discussion before we vote? If not, all in favor of the resolution, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion
Thank you.
carries.
And thank you on behalf of all the people that worked so hard to bring you this set of recommendations. I think we'll turn, Mr. Chairman, to the Vibrant Neo Work Plan report. You have the October HUD report in your packet, which gives you again a listing of in some considerable detail of all of the things that the PMO staff has been working on. What I'd like to do now is to turn to the Vibrant Neo 2040 update presentation. We are going forward, as you know, with a set of meetings at the MPO level, but also at the county level, and are sort of using this presentation to tee up those discussions. At the last executive committee meeting, we went through this in considerable detail, using the opportunity to really see this as a review session, and several of the members of the executive committee agreed to really drill down to make sure that we are communicating well what we're all about. And again, I want to thank those members who have agreed to do that. This reflects the results of that review, which is ongoing. We still are going through several members' comments, and if you have any comments on this, it's still in draft. Please get them to Jeff or me. As you know, one of our goals is to develop the tools which allow all of us to be literally on the same page as we present what our organization is, what our mission is, what we're doing in the coming year. So we start out in our presentation, and you all know this. We've been through this about what is NEOSCC, how it started with 23 organizations collaborating on the grant, successfully achieving a $4.25 million federal grant, noting that I believe, Lucy, that we're the only grant recipient that has an organizational framework that started up from scratch. Everybody else that received these grants, at least in the first round, was through an existing metropolitan planning organization, with one exception that operates out of a university. So this in itself was a remarkable collaboration across our 12 counties, and we've grown to a 33-member nonprofit organization in the last year to carry out a 3-year planning program and go on beyond that. But the focus is on our planning process. We talk a little bit about the diversity of the organizations that are around the table, and the fact that we reflect both cities and counties, MPOs, nonprofits like Regional Prosperity, universities, and institutions like the Natural History Museum. We talk about our geography, the geography of the four metropolitan planning organizations, the 2 COGs, councils of government, and the definition of the 12 counties is fitting basically within that framework of existing planning organizations and transportation and the environment. We argue that our basic fundamental premise is that the opportunities and challenges that we face in Northeast Ohio, we need both local and regional approaches, that we cannot solve all the problems that we have and challenges that we face at the local level, and finding a balance between the two is one of our challenges here. And that the fundamental goals are protecting and preserving what we value and creating an enhanced and enduring quality of life. And that seems to percolate from all of our discussions. That the conditions and trends that we've identified over the past year boil down to basically 5 realities that that number one, taxpayers are burdened by costly fragmentation across local and regional governments. The second is that cultural and natural resources are under stress. The third is that rising infrastructure costs exceed our means to pay, particularly as we look out over several decades. That our land use patterns affect our local and regional budgets. They are not without impact on the bottom line of our community budgets. And that we think we all agree, and each of our communities agrees, that our overall economy in Northeast Ohio needs to be stronger. So these are 5 realities that underlie a lot of the findings that we have made over the last year. That we've looked at trends and conditions, and one of the key ones from our perspective is what is the existing land use, and mapping that across the 12 counties through the resources, in-kind resources of the consortium, and what is our current zoning, which in many respects is our de facto plan, because you get what you zone. And one of the things we're going to be looking at as soon as we finish a final round of cleaning up the data is the match between our land use and our zoning by community. But we did more than that. We identified in our 5 work streams some 31 findings in each one across that, and it produced that as the online Vibrant NEO platform, Conditions and Trends platform. The next issue really is okay, where do we want to go as a region? We kind of look at it as the who and the how and the what. We need to be engaging, and we will be engaging stakeholders throughout the region through different means and methods. One of them is scenario planning, but there are other opportunities through young leadership programs, through meetings with individual groups, through online engagement to get as broad an engagement across the region as we look together at our future. The how is really through the core of that work is the regional engagement process through scenario planning, which creates, as a result, a broad shared vision of the future of Northeast Ohio. And that framework, the goal of which is to create a more vibrant, resilient, and sustainable Northeast Ohio. The process of where do we want to go as a region, the shared vision and framework involves several steps. The assessing of regional trends, conditions, and issues, which we've reached a point where it's published, but we will be updating that. Developing a regional assets map, which Kirby will talk a bit about in terms of the work of the closeout work of the Quality Connected Places work stream. Identifying regional and place-based needs and priorities, exploring future state scenarios, creating that compelling vision, and inspiring and guiding regional and place-based actions and decisions. And place-based is really kind of a broad term to mean, yeah, you can do a regional vision, you can think regionally, but you're going to act in your communities. You're going to act in your institutional frameworks. You're going to act in your townships and cities. So we need to be doing both. Identifying a broad set of regional decisions, but also place-based actions that people can take in their home communities. We'll talk a bit about what scenario planning is about. It's a way of helping decision makers understand the long-term consequences of the choices that we make. And this is from the presentation that was made by Gabe Epperson of Envision Utah that over the summer. As you know, this group was one of 3 brought in to do technical assistance, Ferganese being one of and Robert Groh being 2 of the other firms that are also been selected by HUD to provide that information. Simply put, scenario planning contrasts today's choices by showing long-term consequences of here's where we are now, here's what happens if we continue doing what we've been doing, and here are other options, and you help us develop those other options. Gabe made a key point, and I think we all intuitively understand this, but scenario planning starts with people's shared values. And the process that that Envision Utah has gone through over the years suggests that there are basically 6 values that commonly come up in the scenario planning process: personal growth and well-being, education, community, nature, family, security. we expect when we go out and talk with folks about their shared values, it's probably going to come out something like this. But these crossover geographies, politics, demographics, these are, in many cases, the things that people broadly agree on in terms of what they expect out of the places they call home. The scenario planning process engages the public to identify core values, develop scenario themes, some workshop maps, and from current plans, and we're in good shape going forward with the work that we've done in terms of both the land use, existing land use, and the zoning, because the zoning is the broad current plans, but we're going to want to bring forward those other more specific plans that communities have developed, such as Freddie, the work in Cleveland, the work in Youngstown and Akron that we heard about earlier this afternoon. How do those fit into the broader regional framework, and evaluate and share those scenarios with decision makers and the public. A key element, which is somewhat independent, but in our view needs to be done simultaneously and brought into the scenario planning process, is the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, which Anthony presented at the last board meeting. Basically, again, it's an assessment of how laws and other elements affect the location, availability, and accessibility of housing, commercial and retail development, and an assessment of the conditions that affect fair housing choice in areas of low and high opportunity. Boiling that down, where do people live? Where are the jobs? How do you get there? Can we look at this together? We're frankly taking the position that it's not just about housing and block grant and fair housing and public housing. It really is about how do we work together around issues of health, transportation, the location of jobs, to create a more equitable and vibrant Northeast Ohio, because every study that we've seen suggests that the issue of disparity is one of the key elements holding this region back. How do we look at the work out of this particular study in the context of the other work? And then we've talked in the past about the products. A very key part of this planning process, in which I think will distinguish what we're doing from maybe what some of the other organizations are doing, which is to do a plan. We're looking simultaneously at not only the Vibrant Neo vision and framework, but also at the action products. And you saw earlier in the organization chart the decision by NOACA to assign one of its senior planners, Sarah Meyer, to work with us on making these action products come alive, not at the end of the process as a byproduct, but as a core element being done simultaneously. There are 4 of those action products. One is the dashboard, which measures and inspires the vision. It measures how we're coming and inspires and provides an impetus to do better over time. The toolkit and practice, which implement and sustain that vision. At the local level, policy recommendations that advance and support the elements of the vision, and pilots which prove and highlight specific elements, specific best practices. These are the sorts of things which in many cases are done after a plan. We're going to be starting with this and hopefully be in a position to apply for follow-on grants to carry this further at the end of the planning process. The tools we've already begun to develop, which are unique and we believe very valuable, not only for the planning process itself, but for the communities across Northeast Ohio, the 12-county land use map and the 12-county zoning map. The tools also of the atlas, and we're going to be refining the atlas, going back through it. These are the maps that have been brought together through the Conditions and Trends platform, organizing those into an atlas. Northeast Ohio hasn't done any sort of atlas. Many communities do this. We haven't done it since 1985 when the University of Akron did one, engaging geographers from around Northeast Ohio. It's one of the ways in which communities can develop a common mental map of their resources and their challenges, and come to understand intuitively what those relationships are. We're going to talk in a few minutes about and have Patty talk about the update on our engagement process. But the civic engagement process, the community engagement process, and our commitment to doing this is a key factor in our way of proceeding, and the work of the Communications and Engagement Committee has been central to our effort thus far. We want to reach as many individuals and organizations as possible, paying particular attention to those who are typically underserved or underrepresented. Broaden the understanding of regional and local issues and opportunities. Develop a common ground for collaboration. Foster dynamic and ongoing relationships across the region, and develop and sustain and engage a vibrant and enduring engagement platform. We're looking at this engagement platform as a piece of the civic infrastructure that goes beyond the scenario planning. It's a means to the end of doing a scenario plan, but it's a tool, and I think this reflects the work of your committee, Mike, and in terms of pulling together a broad vision of what engagement should be in Northeast Ohio. And the process, that mandala of sharing, creating, acting, and learning, which has come out of the discussions on community engagement, is the virtuous cycle that we're seeking to establish. Now, let me bleed into the objectives for the next 3 months. You have in your, first of all, are there any questions on this proposal or this presentation thus far? I know you've seen many parts of it, and we're refining it and clarifying it, but I hope that it reflects well our common understanding of where we're going as we go out to the public. And as Jeff Rusnak and his team at Our Strategies were working with us on the messaging, this is really a core part of the broad messaging. This is our lead-off batter, so to speak. Well, if there are no questions or comments, we have in your package you have the Hadley placemat. This is the one-pager on 11 by 17, which Jeff Adderley has developed in response to Joe's very prescient comment that we need to have it all in one place. There's a lot of moving parts. What we have on this are the objectives for the next 3 months. On the front of it, the definition of the members of the team, a project schedule at a glance, and on the back, a glossary of terms, a reference to the 6 livability principles, which Jason has reminded us at many points, is a key touchstone of all our work. And so as we become more and more familiar with it and embedded in our own work, but also in our communications with the public. And then on the lower part, the broad schedule going out to a year from now. Over the next 3 months, we're going to be focusing on the engagement of the regional scenario planning firm. The regional AI will be doing data collection and surveys. We're coordinating the 2 efforts. There will be MPO workshops. We'll be completing the MPO workshops, and in December and January doing the 12 county workshops. We're going to be launching the caucus meetings, and as you recall from the organization chart, in addition to the technical steering committee, which provides technical advice to the PMO, the caucuses are those groups such as the transit agencies, the metro parks, the health boards, and others that are key components of our region's civic infrastructure. As Joe and I have talked in the past, the transit agencies meet in Columbus, they meet in D.C., but rarely do they meet in Northeast Ohio around the issues of Northeast Ohio, and very rarely do they meet with people on the economic development space, or the health space, or the housing space. And so this is an opportunity to begin pulling those groups together to advise the scenario planning process. And Lorraine County Community College, Roy Church, and Shara Davis have agreed to take on helping work with the PMO to organize those as their contribution to this effort. We will be having a December board meeting, and part of the topic of that, besides presenting your recommendations on consultants, is a look forward to 2013 and an appreciation to all the people who have participated in bringing us thus far. we'll be doing board orientation, and we will be doing budget revisions because we are going to submit a formal budget amendment to HUD. In January, closing out the Fair Housing Survey, we will be presenting the leveraged match resources so that you all know what you've committed to. Completing the needs assessment work on tools, launching the scenario process itself, and presenting a monthly calendar on that. And then in February, continuing the work with the AI, and the scenario planning is underway. So these are our ambitious goals for the next 3 months. Any questions on where we're headed?
Any other questions for Hunter?
Finally, you have the one-page calendar of critical dates in December. This was developed to try to boil down and stop emailing you every 3 days with some new meeting. And Jeff has put this together. Again, if this is an internal communications tool to you. If you have any additions, amendments, corrections, or thoughts on this, please let Jeff know, because we want to make this a very useful tickler for you at each meeting, looking ahead to the next month. Okay. With that, I want to turn this. Any other questions or comments? With that, I'd like to turn this over to Patty Chobe, who will give you an engagement update, where we're headed, and then we'll have a presentation by Kirby Date. As we close out the Quality Connected Places work, and let me just say that there are two work streams that are finishing up their work. One is the QCP work stream, which will be done in December with its final report, and the other is the economic development work stream, where several elements such as the connection between the regional economic competitiveness strategy and our work needs to be perfected, and that one of the key ideas that's come out of our work together about competitive job centers as they relate to housing and transportation is being perfected, working with the co-chairs of that committee. So with that, Patty.
Thank you, Hunter. All right, I have a question for everybody, and you have to answer honestly. Raise your hand if you feel engaged in this process. All right, that's awesome. So now I was a little worried what I was going to get when I asked that question. What we have to do now is begin to engage a large number of people. And I know I keep always pointing to Ed Jurse when we talked back in June about, is it possible to talk to several thousand people in the region in a meaningful way? And the work that the engagement, communications and engagement work stream has been producing to date, along with us and our strategy and the staff, we believe it is, but it does take a long-term and concerted effort to do so effectively. And so where we are in this process, as many of you have seen and heard through the emails that we have been sending to you, and Mary Beth was just saying, we're getting quite a few of them on a regular basis, is that we have a lot of people who come from a lot of different places in the region. And I just asked Linda Hendrickson from the City of Cleveland Planning Commission to send me a slide that came out of the work of the Quality Connected Places group. And what's really interesting, and I won't sort of share the entire analysis because I think it may be coming in Kirby's presentation or in a future presentation, but what was astounding to me is that we only have 8 jurisdictions in the region that have over 50,000 people. We have 37 jurisdictions that have somewhere between 20 and 50,000 people. So a lot of our suburban communities, our smaller cities, our larger townships. We have 116 places that have between 5,000 and 20,000 residents. And we have 227 jurisdictions in Northeast Ohio that have less than 5,000 people residing in them. So if you take those 4 categories of places in the region, it tells you that we have to use a variety of ways to engage people on a level that's meaningful to them. As we started the engagement activities, you've all been hearing about the workshops that we have planned or have already conducted, as we did with NOACA for the MPOs and the COGS. We held a workshop with the City of Cleveland, interested parties and stakeholders, and what we are hoping to do is finish up the first round of county level meetings in December and January so that every county will have been engaged in a way that makes sense for that county. And for those of you that I've been talking with as we've been scheduling these meetings, you know what that means. That while we may have a common message and agenda to bring to those listening meetings, the way in which we do it is different every time we reach out to a different jurisdiction. So I want to share that with you because I think as you're sitting here listening to me, you're thinking about the diversity in your own communities that you return to after this meeting. And it's important that we schedule the meetings, that we hold them in places where people will come, and that we engage a network of leaders who really have a vested interest in what is happening here. So for those of you that we've already scheduled the meetings, I want to thank you for your cooperation. And for those of you who are in the process of doing this with us, I again want to thank you for sticking with us because, as you all know, there are a lot of other competing activities happening in the region right now. Every county has at least one major economic development or planning group already working together. Our job is to figure out how we connect to those and how we help those local efforts understand how they connect to us. And I think Todd Peets from the Portage County Regional Planning Commission said it best to me last week when he said, we know what we want to do in our county. We're working together. We're much more collaborative than we were even 5 years ago, but we need to know how we connect to not only things outside of our formal county boundaries, but to those other types of frameworks, watersheds, job corridors, transportation corridors, quality job centers. That's where the real value of what our engagement conversations are going to bring to people across the region. So as we're reaching out to you and asking for you to get the word out, know that NEOSCC has only been around for a little under 2 years. So while we've been communicating what's going on, a lot of people at the local level in these 388 jurisdictions don't necessarily know what NEOSCC is. So we need you to help us put it into words that people will understand. And in this first round of county level meetings, to really bring together high quality leaders that understand that a unified regional vision is really important to the future of our region, and that we understand that there will be different conversations happening at different levels of the region, but that conversations have to happen throughout the region for this to be successful. The other thing that we've been working on, and the Communications and Engagement Workstream group will see this in December, and we'll be bringing it to you at the December board meeting, is a series of engagement metrics that are based on the 3 major activities that are part of what we're doing now. Engagement for the regional AI study that we're working on with Anthony Kobeck and West Services, the engagement, which will be a very iterative process for the scenario planning, and that being connected to a new way of creating citizen review committee structures in different types of clusters around the region. So we're not going to be holding true to the way we look at things from a county level, but really trying to understand the region better in terms of how people live and work in the region. And the third thing that we'll be doing is making sure that as that engagement occurs, we're building capacity. So the idea here is not just to have staff or consultants actually facilitate and execute the work. The idea is that we work in both leveraging the resources that all of you are bringing to the table, as well as the resources of existing initiatives, which are highly related to the work that the work streams did and that the planners will be using as we execute scenario planning. So we will be explaining to you how those citizen review committees will be created, how they'll be processed, and how meaningful engagement will take place with regards to both setting values and a direction for the vision conversation, as well as allowing those citizen review committees to be engaged in a way that they would have never been engaged otherwise, and to make sure that that information can be broadly shared with average citizens across the region. So as we begin to do that, we may be reaching out to you to begin to understand from a more qualitative standpoint how your communities interact and the dynamics that may be most important in bringing people together in your communities. And lastly, I would just like to say that some of the technology tools that we've been using to communicate may not necessarily be getting as much in terms of when we email things, people may not be responding right away. So if we're asking you to help us with some of those outreach efforts, it's really important for us to do so until people get connected, come to their first meeting, and really understand why they should be opening up a lot of the mailings that are coming from NEOSCC and the Vibrant NEO planning process. And I just want to thank Fred Collier for helping out with the City of Cleveland workshop, because it was incredibly helpful, and that group of people have already been contacting us about how they're going to stay engaged in 2013. So I think it was a really good example of how they sort of walked in the door, not sure what was happening and where the organization was going, but left with a lot of good knowledge and asked a lot of really good questions that we will now incorporate into our presentations as we move forward. So thanks for being the first out of the box on that one. And to Grace and her team for putting together the NOACA MPO workshop that was the first out of the box for that group of people. Any questions? All right, you all know who you are, so we need to keep scheduling. Yes, Fred.
We got an announcement about December 4th meeting.
Oh, right. So I think you have in front of you a list of meeting dates. So the December 4th meeting is going to be here at the Urban League. And again, that meeting is designed to bring together diverse groups of leaders, both elected and non-elected leaders, as are the two meetings in Mahoning County on December 5th. Oh, it's live. Is it?
There we go.
And the MPO meeting will be held in the morning of December 5th in Mahoning County for Eastgate. And then at 3 o'clock, there will be a larger meeting for leaders and community residents. And then on December 12th, we'll be in Ashtabula County as well as in Portage County. And the Lorraine meeting is still being set up. We're not quite sure what's going on. I want to give a shout out to both Don and Mike and Carrie Weiss from Mayor Brinda's office, who've been trying to coordinate that. And as you'll see, several meetings were put off to early January, and we'll be looping back to leaders in those respective counties to try and coordinate that so that we get them on the calendar, just as Bob now did with Stark County. So if you have any questions about any of those dates and who you might want to see invited to any of those events, if we haven't already talked to you, just let me know before you leave.
Thanks, Patty. All right, next up on the agenda is a work stream update on quality connected places that Hunter had referred to before, and I believe that Kirby Date was going to share some information with us. Go ahead, yes. Kirby, thanks.
Thank you. What do I do, Jeff, about getting up the PowerPoint up? Is it just the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay. How do I do this? There we go. Okay, we're missing. Okay. I'm just going to take 5 minutes here to update you on the charrette that happened on October 26th. We're still sifting. QCP met once a month from March, April through October, and generated a lot of information. So we're still sifting through that, and I'm hoping that I'll have a chance to come back in January or so and present to you all the findings that we produced in that process. Quality of place is a really interesting topic. It was part of the original NOFA. We were supposed to do this. We were supposed to create a work stream and look at quality of place in Northeast Ohio. It is one of the keys to livability. If you talk to your average citizen, a lot of the things they're going to talk about what they like and don't like, about where they live, is related to quality of place. It is a very engaging topic to the public, and at the same time, it's extremely subjective. And this is part of why it took us longer than some of the other folks who were simply analyzing data on air quality or data on economic situation or data on various other topics, transportation and so on, we had to get a handle on what we meant by quality of place, try to take a stab at defining what it might be, look at what some of the aspects and attributes of that are here in Northeast Ohio, and then try to assess where we are and where we'd like to go. And so in light of that, it's a little bit different topic than a lot of the others that the other work streams looked at. And what we chose to do was once a month get together and examine and explore different aspects of quality of place. And we're in the process of pulling all that together, and we'll be presenting that to the NEOSCC in a month or so. How many of you participated in the QCP Charrette on October 26th? We had 60-some people there. It was really a wonderful group. We were all crowded in a small room, split into 6 groups that were sort of on top of each other, but we had a good time and we learned a lot. In fact, we're still sifting through those drawings and findings from that to try to draw some conclusions. The other group I want to acknowledge, how many of you have participated in the Quality Connected Places work stream, which did meet once a month throughout the summer? A large number of you, including board members. So you have some of you have some sense of what we've been up to. So just a couple slides on the charrette itself. That's really why I'm here, is just to tell you a little bit about what we did. I want to talk a little bit about why we did the charrette and what the process was, a little bit about the prototypes we examined in the charrette, and then what our next steps are. In order to talk about why we did the charrette, I have to go back to the goals for QCP. The goals came out of the original purposes of the NEOSCC, things like having more diverse transportation options and so on. There was a list of 7 or 8 of them, and one of them included looking at natural systems and having more diverse housing options available to residents here. Those were defined in the original NOFA. Pulling from that then and looking at it through the lens of quality of place, we identified some of our basic goals, and a very important one was to support the scenario planning process, which one of the things that scenario planning process will do is try to map different types of quality of place that can happen in Northeast Ohio and that exist. So starting in the fall, the goal was to support the scenario planning process in our work leading up to the beginning of the work with the consultant. We developed value statements which sort of morphed into characteristics of places in Northeast Ohio. We developed a set of typologies, and then we developed the map frameworks, and there were several different ways that we looked at mapping of our place. The results of the charrette were one piece of that. This is the slide we used in the charrette to talk about the specific goals of the charrette itself. It was 4 hours. It was a bit of a marathon. We went from 1 to 5 on a Friday afternoon. There was a bar in the back. I'm not sure how many folks took advantage of that, but it was a sort of extended festive atmosphere. And that was a cash bar, by the way. Brainstorm, first of all, the goal was to brainstorm ideas that could be useful to communities across the region. It was very much a brainstorming process. Testing the QCP values or characteristics and the QCP typologies that we had developed to date, giving people a chance, opening it up to the whole NEOSCC community, giving folks a chance to think about those things. Building capacity for collaboration. We split into 6 groups, and each group was gathered around one map and one set of conclusions that they were to draw. Wrapping up the QCP process by visualizing then quality connected places. The work stream had done a lot of work defining in words what is a quality connected place. This was the opportunity to apply that thinking to paper and mapping and place and in a spatial sense and see what resulted. And then finally have fun and get to know fellow NEOSCC participants. And I think all of us, I certainly got to know a lot of you better than I had before. There's a lot of opportunities for networking and conversations, and hopefully that was useful to all of you. Okay, the charrette process had 5 steps. We gave people 10 minutes. It was very much rush. We really kept the pace moving. People had 10 minutes to get to know their assignment and their team. The teams were assigned. We did that fairly randomly, and yet we tried to make sure that we had a mix of experts for each particular place we were looking at, as well as folks who were completely new and looking at it from a fresh perspective. So sometimes we found our transportation folks working on a small town project that had very little transportation. Sometimes we found people who were familiar with the problems of industrial economic development right there in the industrial site that we were looking at. So we mixed people up and gave a chance for hopefully a lot of collaboration to happen. Second, each group was supposed to assess the assets and challenges of their place. And I'll talk in a second about the places. They were generic prototypes that we drew from typical situations around the region. They were not actual real places in Northeast Ohio. We had written a story about each one of these. They had a fictional name, fictional participants involved in that, and we wrote a story, a background, a history of that place. And then so folks had material to read, and then we gave them a challenge. You are the consultant who's been brought in by this group of people to assess new ideas for what could be done to improve and revitalize this place, and so on and so forth. So folks used sticky notes and various other, like the map here, to brainstorm those ideas. Assessing the assets and challenges. Then we asked them and they did the assets and challenges in written form on a flip chart. Then number 3, they applied those ideas to the place and used sticky notes, markers, maps, drawings, whatever, to apply those. Number 4, then, they were to develop a plan, drill down on those brainstorm ideas and come up with a coherent approach to that place and improving it, and develop a presentation. And then you will notice the longest period of time was allocated for each group to present its findings, and we had discussion, and we went for just in traditional design school charrette format, critique format. We went from station to station. People had their maps up on the wall, and we discussed what they presented. Does anybody who was there have anything to add to that at all? Okay, so one of the things that we did, we thought about picking 6 places in Northeast Ohio to evaluate. We thought very hard about that. It was a great idea. It would have generated concrete ideas for that place. And then we realized that what was more important was that we get outside of thinking within the boundaries of any particular place, and that also just about every place in Ohio has brothers and sisters that are similar, that are struggling with similar issues, and that we should come up with more generic prototypes. This idea is actually being expanded. We had 6 that we looked at here as part of our finalizing QCP's work. We're actually going to be generating other ideas for other prototypes in the region that could be looked at in the future. So we looked at traditional urban core. And what we did was we took an actual place, so we would have data and maps, and we flipped it, rotated it, changed a few details to hide the identity, changed place names and road names, and I think that generated some of the interest because it was a challenge to see if you could figure out where this place was originally, and yet flipping it, rotating it, changing north-south all helped all of us break out of our understanding of what that place was. So we looked at a traditional urban core for a city of about 75,000. We looked at an industrial urban waterfront. We looked at suburban transect, which is really an area that's right at the edge between the urban and the suburban. We looked at a suburban edge district, which was a growing sort of freeway-centered, light industrial and office area with some housing around the fringes. We looked at a suburban commercial district, you know the type, with the big box stores and the congested traffic. And then we looked at a traditional small town. And that's, we gave each one a name. As I said, we gave it a bit of a history, and even named some of the key players like the mayors and so on who were involved. And those stories, by the way, the stories, the maps, the photographs, everything now from the meetings, including a type-up of the notes that each group took, are now posted on glass cubes under QCP's workstream, documents, and then there's a folder that is labeled QCP Charette. We actually have the findings from each of our meetings in meeting-based folders. So you can go there and browse around. All the notes and findings from the meeting are there. They haven't been written up into a coherent fashion yet, which was what we're doing this month. So our next steps are to draft a work summary. We really, as we have been talking about pulling this thing together, it is by no means finalized. In fact, many of the pieces of the work that QCP did are really just a starting point. It creates a framework. We think a number of the products that we developed, starting points or frameworks, could be excellent starting points for crowdsourced kind of discussion on the web, for use in public engagement. And I know that certainly some of the consultants and staff that have been looking at that are looking at engagement are thinking about those ideas as well. Some of the pieces of that include a list of assets across the region. Again, that's a starting point. There is a progress list, I believe, on the web right now. What we have done is also looked at that in map form and developed little mini maps of places where there are clusters of assets that have potential to be looked at as a district or an asset sort of a magnet in particular places around the region. But we certainly will be inviting people to add to that because all of you know your places better than any of us could. QCP characteristics. Jeff, there was a slide that had the framework that isn't here, that was listed the 5 parts we looked at. And for each of these, we looked at the characteristics of a quality community, a quality job center, quality green-blue places, and quality corridors. And in each of our meetings, we evaluated whatever topic we were looking at in light of those 4. And then the 5th one was pulling it all together, because those 4 things were seen as the framework for what creates a quality connected place. So it's communities, job centers, corridors, and green-blue places, which is the natural landscape framework. So the characteristics are there for each of those as we brainstormed them. We developed the 6 prototype places, and as I said, we have a handful more that we'd like to identify that could be studied further in the future. Patty mentioned Linda Hendrickson's work on similar communities. One of the things we found as we were looking at data of the 388 communities across the region is that there are patterns, there are similarities, and we're going to be developing that list and presenting it, again, as a starting point for discussion, but it might well be that many communities will find out what other communities in the region of those 388 have similar characteristics, challenges, assets, and opportunities to them. And that might, just like the First Ring Suburbs group got started, that might create some opportunities and possibilities for everybody. And then we are hoping to draw all of this together into a set of findings. Right now we have 3 sets of findings from 3 different conversations that happened, and we're going to try to pull those together and create one coherent group that, again, can be a starting point for discussion. So once we pull all this together, the goal is to have a draft of this, and this will include all the maps and diagrams that came out of the various areas, points of discussion, as well as the charrette itself. We're going to pull together a draft by December 31st, and then we will take it back to the QCP workstream for their discussion and review and comment. And then when that piece, once their input is incorporated, we'll be bringing it to the NEOSCC as a whole. And again, I don't see this thing ever being finalized. I think it's the beginning of discussion, but it will create a framework for discussion on that. Questions? ideas? Thoughts? Yes.
I just want to commend you and your work group for really taking a leap in not only getting to the details so that this is understandable, because if we're going to have really robust community engagement, it has to be understandable to the average citizen. And what the QCP group has really done here is they've begun to create a new language that we can now use across the region with no matter who we're talking to. And if you know anything about changing culture, changing the language and changing behavior is two of the ways in which you do that. And we wouldn't be here having this conversation about really robust, meaningful engagement without the work of the QCP. So I just want to thank you and your group for doing that.
Great. Well, really the thanks go to all those folks who showed up at all those meetings all summer. We did try to keep them to once a month with minimal homework, but it was a commitment, and people came and participated consistently. It was really great. It was a really great group. Yes, Freddie.
The one comment that I want to make is that the participants, it kind of took me personally out of my comfort zone. You know, being a guy who plans for an urban community, you actually had our illustration up there in the previous slide, and we were dealing with this whole techno edge concept, where you had this sort of suburban sort of transect, and I found myself repeatedly trying to apply urbane principles to this area, because that's what I was sort of used to. But it put me in a very uncomfortable space, which is good. And I think that many of us, as we start to think about the region beyond our own jurisdictions, you know, we have to get comfortable being in that uncomfortable space so that we can take every sort of aspect of regional development in consideration when we're thinking about, you know, the whole effort.
And Jason.
Kirby, this question I think is for you as well as maybe for Jeff Vanderlee or Patty and the team from our strategy, Jeff Rusnick as well. Have you guys talked much yet about, you kind of had on that last slide, the next step is to enable this dialogue across Northeast Ohio on quality connected places. Have you guys talked at all about, you know, how that might start to happen? Would this come out in, say, a report or something we would put as like an interactive web-based tool, or, you know, maps? I was just curious if thought had been given yet, or kind of a plan of attack on that topic.
Well, I'm going to defer to Patty and Jeff, but really, as of the end of December, my work is done and QCP's work is done. We are generating a summary report. We see it as a draft, and we do see this as And Julie White, who's the intern who is helping pull all this together, is going to continue. So she's going to be available for editing and whatever, manipulating maps and diagrams. But really we see this as a closure, and then it will move into the public realm with the existing public engagement structure that's there. Okay, Patty, want to add to that?
I just want to add, and that's a really important question, Jason, because one of the things that traditional engagement activities don't really harness is the educational process that people go through when they are being engaged. And so part of the scenario planning process will be to create a scenario planning guidebook that is not just a one-time thing that we use in 2013, but it will basically take this language, begin to put together what's the process that we're using. It will be highly detailed around the process and the component parts of that, and then be allowed to be used, and then we obviously learn from it, make revisions, and then go through the entire process. So there is a natural way and a reason for documenting it, not only to capture this for future activities, but to also use it as an educational tool, because particularly in the arena of planning around healthy communities, if people aren't educated about why and how, very often, or very rarely do those initiatives ever take root. So it's really important for us to really take the time to record what we're doing, because the process needs to be not only communicated to folks in this room, but to citizenry across the region and to a wide array of professionals who are going to be a part of the process. So I can't emphasize the process of doing that enough.
And I would just add, it is the missing component for the Conditions and Trends platform that we never had. It was launched without QCP's final work. And I do think it just lends itself to both communication outreach and engagement outreach, because what we've struggled with, and I think you've all struggled with a little bit, is how the Conditions and Trends really can be related to the public and what we're related to. But I think what QCP is coming out with are things that we could really pose questions and do online engagement around certain things, because they're place-based. They're things that people can be excited about. So I think that we're going to look at this as a tool that we can use in multiple ways, not only for scenario planning, but also for how we talk about our initiative as well and how we attract people to our initiative. So,
yeah, and one suggestion moving forward, and Hunter, you had mentioned earlier that I bring up the livability principles, and you're right, guilty is charged. And I think this is, an opportunity moving forward with especially those typologies that you talked about, Kirby, kind of looking at the similarities between different places in our region. I think it is important that we try to look at all those places through the prism of sustainability and livability. And I know, for example, when we did our Connecting Communities initiative at AMATS, we had kind of a real broad perspective of, preserve and revitalize the urban core, retrofit suburban areas to be more sustainable, and preserve and protect rural areas. And there's a million different strategies within the realm of each of those three things, but I think coming up with a similar, if maybe different somehow, approach for the groupings of communities and neighborhoods and so forth that are coming out of this would be important, as we try to explore to look at what does sustainability mean in each of these different kinds of contexts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would think we're going to put together a summary report so that it's all in one place, but the ideal scenario, I would think, would be to break that back out into its various conversations and use those in a more interactive way, either in the public engagement meetings or on the web. Okay, I'm going to close. Oops, I guess the last slide isn't there after all. We had a big slide that said enjoy, and that's the one that we used to send everybody off to their groups. And they did indeed do a good job at that. And I just want to thank all of you who participated that afternoon. I know it was a challenge to get yourselves there for 4 whole hours on Friday afternoon, but I think just about everybody stayed to the very end. And we really got a lot out of it. And we'll be bringing back to you some of the findings and conclusions from it at a later date. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Thank you.
Okay, I think that takes us into the home stretch of the agenda. Item 5 was old business. Is there any old business for the consortium? Okay, seen none. How about new business? Okay, and then Jeff, this is the curiously titled December watch list, so I'll turn that over to you.
Hunter already briefly discussed this, but again, it's that last page in your packet that really has the 5 things that we think are of great importance over the next month. The first is the county engagement and MPO engagement meetings. In your packet, you'll note that the Lorain County meeting actually has been pushed back a week. In your packet, it says December 6th. It's tentatively scheduled for December 13th now. Secondly, Anthony, as he talked about at the last board meeting, is launching the Fair Housing Survey. If you're interested in helping to distribute that to some of your networks, please contact Anthony. The survey will close in mid-January.
One thing is, on the newsletter, the 2 links for the survey, one for the government officials, one for the housing stakeholders, will be in the newsletter, so people could pull it down that way or forward it that way as well.
The board learning and sharing sessions, which are taking place tomorrow and December 7th, please let Kelly or I know if you can attend. As Sarah talked about, the leverage match surveys, we will, either Sarah or I will send out a link to the survey again, but contact her with questions about that. And then lastly, we're always looking for volunteers for different things. We've printed out some new flyers that are on the tables if you want to take those with you to your organizations And there's a couple different ways that people can volunteer. So the other thing I wanted to mention, and I was remiss in doing this yesterday in my hurry, that we did not put a copy of the guest column that Hunter and Jason wrote in the Sunday Plein-Dire, but it received quite a bit of hits online and drove quite a bit of traffic to our website. I will send a link out to all of you over the next day. I had meant to include it in your packet today, but just kind of ran out of time last night. So,
thanks, Jeff. And I guess before we adjourn, just a couple things to announce. Thanks once again for coming out to this meeting today. I would say it looks like there's some kids out, so on your way out, be careful. If you are interested in doing anything socially afterward, I don't think we had anything formal, as Jeff said, but if you want to see me, I'll volunteer to try to arrange something impromptu. And do encourage you to go on the tour that Fred's going to offer, and maybe if you stick around for that, then we can figure out somewhere to go after the meeting. So thanks for your attendance. And Hunter, did you have anything to add in closing?
No, again, I do want to thank you, Fred, for hosting us. And when we first saw this facility, because we were looking all over Akron for where is a common ground facility that's accessible, convenient, and has facilities. And you showed us this, and I'm very glad we're be able to avail ourselves of it, because it's a great place to meet.
Fred, did you have anything logistically? Should we just kind of convene afterward here?
Yeah, anybody who wants to go on the tour, I'll meet you right over there by the door. Mess with the tour. It'll take about 15 minutes.
Okay. Anything else for the order? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Freddie. Second, Greg. Any opposed? All in favor? You're adjourned. Thanks.